Hello and welcome to the Business Made Easy show. I'm your host, Fiona Hall, and today I'm interviewing a lovely lady I've only met recently, and she has a fabulous business called Oh Huddle, and she helps all those entrepreneurs out there who are in business who need some tech support in various different areas. So it could be from a lawyer to help you with your terms and conditions to get you started. It could be someone helping you get your website started out. It can be often a bit of a minefield trying to find that right person, and that's what she has done. So I'm quite excited to be talking to her about her journey in business today. So the Business Made Easy show. The show is about making business easier for us small business owners who are often wearing multiple hats. We often start business and we kind of have a really specific skill set and we have all these holes. And I like to go out and interview and meet people who have really cool things they can add value to for the people who listen to the show. And for myself, I love to learn new stuff and I love to share that knowledge. And that's why the show was born, really, was to really find out the simple ways to do things, the easy way to do things. Because I believe business shouldn't be hard. I just figure for myself that I haven't found the easy way yet, and I'll go and find that. So if you're listening in, that's what the show is all about. And we're coming up in February, next February in 2017. It will be a year the show's been going. So I'm quite excited about where it's gone. And for 2017, it's going to have even more exciting stuff, which I'll tell you about next time. So Fiona Hall is my name, and I'm about to launch my new website, fionahall.co. It'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. There's some holding pages there if you want to go and have a wee look for yourself. And I'm quite excited about launching some new programs, mentoring programs for people in business who are ready to get ahead or get unstuck, because that's where I help people. So it's really great that the topic we've got today is really around a lot of the stuff to do with your mindset in business, is how to get through when those times are tough. And Kirsten is going to talk to us about that. Now, I'm just going to do a bit of an intro to her for you guys, so you know a little bit about her. You'll notice she has an accent. She's from Canada, so she was a born entrepreneur, she reckons, and she's on a mission to change the landscape for young women globally and believes in challenging the way things are. She founded Oh Huddle, a matchmaking platform that connects startups with quality professional services, with the purpose of helping entrepreneurs focus on what they're really good at. Oh Huddle connects early stage entrepreneurs with quality, affordable lawyers, accountants, developers and designers. She's previously worked for one of Canada's largest power generators before becoming a crude oil trader at Elbow River, a commodities trading firm where she sourced, structured and negotiated million-dollar crude oil deals with North American counterparts. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and an MBA in Finance. So pretty interesting background there, Kirsten. I'm quite excited to read that about you. You've got a wealth of information, I imagine, and knowledge behind you. So today we're going to talk about this topic. Is the topic for Business Made Easy today is what you need to know to keep going when it gets tough. Because let's face it, it does get tough in business. We were just talking about that before we jumped on. So tell us, welcome to the show, Kirsten, and tell us about your journey, maybe just a little bit of background of getting into your own business.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much for that intro. It's really, really good to be here. And it was so lovely for you to invite me. Yeah, my background, like you'd mentioned, in a previous life, I was an oil trader. And so background in finance and very, very different from what I'm doing now. And yeah, I guess the word entrepreneur and the idea of owning your own business and building your own vision was never really an option growing up. Like, no one ever told you could be an entrepreneur and you could do these cool things. And moving to Auckland, I moved here 2 years ago now. And there's just this buzzing little ecosystem of small business owners, and it's so cool. And to see so many people doing so many cool things. Early on, just started interviewing lots of entrepreneurs and became very passionate about helping people in that space, because it is really hard. Like, it's so overwhelming. And I think the majority of my journey over the last 2 years has been like 95% of it has been a mental game, like totally. I didn't know most things about the business starting out, but everything can be learned. It's about how do you cultivate that mindset that allows you to get there, and how do you find the resources you need to help you grow. And I think a big part of that is just is having that confidence, having it's so easy to look at all the things you don't know, and all the things that the weaknesses that you have, or the places that you might fall short or think you fall short, and it's easy to pull those apart. And really, I think it's just I look to a few resources frequently, and one of them, I was reading Malcolm Gladwell's book. It's called David and Goliath, and so the whole book is about turning, the story of David and Goliath, and turning how your advantages are not only, your disadvantages can often be strengths. Sometimes you're smaller, or which makes you more nimble, or you don't have preconceived notions about how an industry operates. And so you have the luxury of being able to make up your own way, which can be very cool. And so I think if you think, I forget what the saying is, but if you think you can't, you can't. And if you think you can, and it's amazing the things you can do if you just genuinely, deep in your heart, believe that you can do it. And that's how I think so many successful entrepreneurs get to where they are, having an almost crazy belief that you can actually just figure it out. And so I think that's a big part of it. I think your perception really is your reality. I was listening to this podcast yesterday on the placebo effect.
Yes.
Where they give you, it can be used for any illness, but they give you the difference between an active drug and a placebo, and the amount of the results that you can actually see just from thinking that you're being helped, or from thinking that you're going to get there. It's just, the power of the mind is phenomenal. And I think so often we discount that because we're just not confident in ourselves.
Yeah. And I don't think our society and our culture and education gives us access to that information, that new information about neuroscience and the way the brain works, and the biochemistry and the effect on the body as well. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I did an undergrad in science, and so science and psychology. And so that particular area really, really interests me, even though it doesn't exactly relate to what I'm doing now. But it's just phenomenal, that the amount that you can control with those kinds of things, or just changing your internal dialogue about what's possible. Yeah.
So I totally agree. I think and that really gives me an understanding too. If you've got that background of psychology and understand the way that the brain works, when something's a challenge for you, you've actually got probably a set of tools that people who haven't done that kind of work wouldn't have, right, to overcome things. Yeah,
a little bit. I guess it's hard for me. It's hard for me to separate what I learned when. I guess I think your whole repertoire of skills is just an aggregate of all the things that you learn at different stages in life. And so I think that's why it's important to just pull one thing, pull things from everything that you go through and everything you learn. And that's why I think sometimes those challenges that you go through can be the most pivotal learning experiences, because you grow so much as a person, and you realize it's you'll run into something that's insanely difficult, and maybe it's more challenging emotionally, mentally, physically than anything you've ever been through before. And then something will happen down the line, and you'll be oh, I've got this. I've done way worse than that, And so it's I think being able to take learnings from everything that you go through, and also give those back to other people, That's why I think a big part of entrepreneurship is surrounding yourself with other people doing the same thing, or doing similar things, because it can be a real struggle. And it's something that if you're surrounded by people that just work in corporate and go to work every day, there's so many things, especially if your partner's that way, and that's totally fabulous. That's an amazing life for a lot of people. But there's just so many things that people will never understand.
Yeah, there's a different type of conversation, isn't there? Yeah. I think what you're saying, that's one of the reasons I built the Business Made Easy tribe, is to have a place where you can share knowledge and learn, and feel like there's some place to ask questions that's safe for people who are in the same boat. They get those challenges.
Yeah. Oh, that's so important. And I think it's it can be something so little, little questions that you have, or struggles that you're going through, that somebody else puts up their hand, and it's I've been there. I was there yesterday, and this is how I dealt with it. And that can be just such a not that like it's rewarding to hear other people's problems, but like it can be really, really nice to hear that like you're not in it alone. And like that's such a huge part of like communities like yours and the support that you provide. Like I think that's instrumental. I honestly don't think it's possible without that.
Completely. And there's that, I've talked about that in previous shows, is that lonely at the top kind of mindset, because when you're a business owner, you become a leader by default, and it can be quite a heavy mantle to wear, right? It's like, whoa, there's a lot of pressure on that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's interesting, like you're in a totally different place. Like so I had an intern start last week, and she's amazing and like is just so keen to get in and learn a whole bunch and do a whole bunch of things. But it's occurred to me now, like I have to be a leader, like I have to lead somebody, and even when I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, I have to explain to somebody else in a way that helps them grow. And I think that can be it's a totally different structure than having somebody explain to you like these are the steps towards success. It's crazy to be making it up as you go and to be figuring it out and have nobody really guiding you. Having a mentor can be like really, really important, there, but it's still you driving the business and you making all these decisions that like impact everything else you do. And it's like, frick, well, like, what if I made the wrong choice?
Yeah. And so like that mindset thing that you were talking about, having that, well, I kind of look at it as you start off with a small toolkit and you just keep building this big bag of tools that you can kind of dip into over the years. Is that kind of the way you've looked at it?
Yeah, like I think that's a really, really good way to look at it. And I think that you're always, I don't know if you've ever seen like I forget what it's called, but like the hierarchy of learning. So you have
Maslow's needs, is it?
Well, it's conscious. Oh my goodness.
Conscious competence.
Unconscious incompetence. Yes. So like you don't know what you don't know. And that's like where everybody starts for every new skill. And then you have conscious incompetence. So you are now aware of the fact that you know nothing.
Yeah.
That's the scariest place to be, because you know the least, but you're aware of the fact that you don't know it. And so it's like a very insecure place, you have to be, and unfortunately, and then so you move to conscious competence. And so you're aware of the fact that you're getting it, you're learning it, you know it now. And then you internalize that. And so it's unconscious competence. And so that's like learning how to ride a bike, and like now you drive and you do it subconsciously because you know it so well, like it's actually ingrained. And so that's like where you strive to get to. But I think as an entrepreneur, it's not just like one thing that you're learning.
That's right.
You're always in that second phase. And it's like the most distressing part of the whole chain of command. And so it's once you learn the next skill and you move it up to that unconscious place, you have to work on the next one, So maybe I don't know anything about social media, and so I have to learn that and then sort of move that up the chain. And now, well, maybe I don't know anything about like lead generation or marketing.
Yeah.
And then maybe I have to learn about leadership. And so it's like you're constantly trying to like grow in this space that can be very disconcerting, And so I think that mindset, like getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and actually if you can get to a place where you're excited by that, like frick, I don't know anything about this, but I'm pumped to learn it and I know I can do it. And so I think and just realizing one thing, I think it's helpful just to realize that everybody's going through it. Like no one starts out in business. Like if you look at the founders of Uber or Airbnb or like these extremely successful companies, they didn't start out knowing everything, They had to learn it just like everybody else. And they might have worked really, really hard and learned very, very quickly. But that means that you can too, and I think that's a big part of, I think that's a big part of going through that journey. And women aren't having that confidence. Women are particularly crappy at feeling like they can just do it. We use qualifying words or we underestimate our ability over and over again. And I think that's one thing that men do a little bit. So they're overly confident and sometimes to their detriment, but I think it's funny because even believing that you can do something, even if it seems unattainable, like actually sometimes helps you get there. So I think that's a really important part of it.
That's a great point. And I think like a conversation I had with a client this morning, we were talking through stuff and she came in quite stressed because she's trying to solve a problem and it felt insurmountable. And I asked her a few questions and then she realized that she had all the knowledge, she had all the answers. We just had to reorganize it and just make it into step by step. And then it was sorted. So I think the unpacking that overwhelm when there seems to be not just one thing you're the second one, you're consciously unconfident. I think what happens is what I notice is that you start going, well, I don't know anything about that or that or that or that, and you can kind of have this major big list of things that can just overwhelm, stops people in their tracks, right?
Yeah. Oh, and it's easy. Like it's totally normal to be overwhelmed by the whole thing. I think one thing I keep going back to recently is to just be, what's getting me through the challenges in business now is just like being really aware of my vision, like why am I doing this, and I'm doing this to prove to every other woman out there that you can do it too. And so like, even though I feel overwhelmed, like I don't let myself get there because I have to get there for everybody else. I have to achieve this vision that's so much bigger than me.
Yeah.
That's so much easier to let me put things aside. It's easier to push through those obstacles when there's something bigger that you're striving for. And I think if you keep that kind of in the front of your mind, maybe it's not the whole world or changing industries or anything. Maybe it's just your family, like you're doing this to like be an inspiration to like your young sons or daughters, or even just like providing for your family. There's so many reasons why, or allowing your husband or wife to stay at home while you work or pursue their dreams, like whatever it is that's driving you and what's the big why.
That's such a good point. I think, when it gets, I've got a whiteboard in behind my desk and I've got my why with photos of my kids and my little why written there.
Yeah.
It's to remind me to check back in because some days you're like, oh, what am I doing?
Yeah. When it's something that's outside of yourself, it's a lot easier to, I don't know, to move forward. I think like you get so stuck in your own bubble. You start thinking about all those other things. You're like, oh yeah, like that's what it's all about. And
your own insecurities start overriding and talking you off and talking you into a downward spiral. And so it's a great point. Take it out of the ego and re-look at it from a different light. Yeah, I call it, I've got a couple of friends and we've got this, I made this little card up for each other. It's like phone a friend, took you off the cliff card.
Sometimes you need that. Like,
you do.
Oh my goodness. I think if you even just have a handful of good people, like you don't need the world. I moved here to New Zealand and I knew literally nobody. I had my boyfriend and I had one girlfriend who I went to uni with, and I knew nobody else. And I think that's been the hardest part for me, is finding those like kindred spirits that get it and are kind of on the same page as you and can, just are okay for those like late night phone calls when you're just like, don't know what to do. I think that's a really, that's a really cool thing.
Having a phone a friend thing is the key. And you're right. It only has to be like a handful of people that you can trust and talk to.
Yeah.
Because the process of dialogue, I find just having to explain myself, I've suddenly solved the problem. Do you find that?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes you talk yourself, even just having a bit of a sounding board to say things out loud to somebody else. And then they might ask you questions that you haven't thought of. It's not like they solve all your problems. They might be just as clueless as you are. But I think having just a bit of saying things out loud or just getting out of your own head, I think can be really powerful.
Yeah, I think because the other person doesn't have the emotional investment, doesn't have the fear and the pain, so they can come a little bit more objectively to the conversation and the questions.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. You can get very easily wrapped up in your own life in general, but certainly in your own business, that you can't see the forest for the trees. Like you're so involved in the detail that sometimes you miss the high level stuff,
Yeah.
or maybe something that seems really easy that you just keep missing, especially if you're a solo founder, you're running your own business on your own, that kind of thought process can be really, really challenging.
Yeah, and when you think about for those of us who've worked in a corporate or a large organisations before, there was a team and it wasn't all down to us.
Mm-hmm.
So our decision-making ability was usually quite narrow. We didn't have to make all these other decisions. And now there's so many decisions, as you alluded to before, that are on the plate. You're like, I've never done anything in this area before. I'm not really sure where to start. So
decision overload.
And then what's the first decision to make in that area too?
Yeah. And I think, as far as decisions go, I think obviously trying to learn as much as you can, and learn from other people, but sometimes you just have to give it a go, like trial from things. And like we're actually starting a new marketing campaign this week. And a lot of it is AdWords and digital marketing. And so, I'm really nervous about that. So I have hired an agency to help, to essentially do it with my direction. But it's a big unknown, and it probably will be quite a bit of money, but I think part of it is like just having to jump in and give it a go and see what works and then iterate from there, because you can't possibly, even with their expertise and all their experience and all the clients they've worked with before, they can't predict how well this industry is going to do, And so it's, I think, not being so wrapped up. And this is like one thing I'm so guilty of. I can't even go out for dinner without spending like an hour looking at the menu, trying to decide between 3 different things. So like, I think sometimes you can get wrapped up in like making those decisions, but I think a decision, even the wrong decision made now is better than the right decision made 3 months from now. And so like to just keep things moving and learn from everything, I think.
I've nicknamed that second guessing-itis.
So guilty. I'm highly analytical, and I think when you are a business owner, like you have to be, right? Because you have to come through. But you sort of have to draw that line at like, okay, this is enough analysis.
Yeah, it is. Well, there's the paralysis by analysis, which is another phrase I use as well.
Oh yeah, and it's, everybody is guilty of it, but.
Do you have like a red flag for yourself? Like, okay, this is enough. I need to take action.
No. Yeah, I think I've been getting better at it lately. But I think every decision is, one of the challenges is that every decision is so different, right? And so the amount of thought and reasoning and even different perspectives, right? Like you might want to consult a couple different people, even if you don't have a team.
Yeah.
You want to reach out to a mentor or ask a couple other entrepreneurs what they think about this. And so I think every decision and how big that decision is dictates how much you should be thinking about it going in.
Yeah.
But I haven't mastered the art of how much or how little.
I use the power of 3 for myself. Yeah. So if I've come back to something 3 times, I'm like, just take action.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a very good one.
So that's my leave pass for myself is 3. Got to 3 and I'm like, no, come on.
Oh, I'll have to start doing that, because
you start noticing, because your productivity can go down so quickly. You can research things to death. Like my husband's a engineer scientist, so he's very analytical. I'm quite different in terms of me. It takes a very long time to make a decision. Whereas I'm a lot more leap before I look. On the scale of things, I'm not that high risk, but yeah.
Balance though.
Yeah. So it's I think there's a lot of knowing yourself, isn't it? I think the entrepreneurial journey is a big self-development journey in itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the scariest and the most exciting part of it. I think is that there's nothing more in life that will give you more personal growth than starting your own business, because you learn so much about yourself in that process. And I think as long as you're open to that journey and excited by it, I think it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, totally. Tell me about how did you go about finding the people you could talk to, or finding your mentor and stuff to have those sounding boards and those trusted advisors?
To be honest with you, for me, it's actually really hard because I am so analytical and I have very, very high standards. And so it's the reason that my team is so small right now, because I'm really cognizant of not bringing on the wrong person. And I think the same comes with mentorship as well. I think so. I have a mentor now, and a couple other people that I reach out to in different areas, and many of them are informal. We'll just have chats about business and catch up for coffee. And I think for me, it's two things. So I got really, really caught up, especially early on when I knew much less than I know now. Not that I know a ton now, but really got caught up in taking people's advice, and it was really swaying me. And you might talk to two different experts that are saying completely polar opposite things, and they're equally qualified and competent and smart. And they're saying total polar opposite things about your business or thing. And it creates this really, really challenging dialogue in your head, because you don't know the right answer, obviously, or you wouldn't be asking the question.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that a girlfriend actually said to me a little while back is 3 questions that you can use. And I've since dropped the third question. I forget what it is, but 2 of them are, when you're taking advice from people, does this person know me and my business well enough? Like really, really, really well. So do they get me and do they get what I'm trying to do? And then are they an expert in the relevant area? So those 2 questions, I think together, are 2 things that I wasn't necessarily always getting bang on. So they might be super smart, but they might not really get what you're doing. And I think that was a big challenge for me, is because the business model for a huddle is quite unique, and it's very different to I'm sure there's someone in Silicon Valley doing something similar, and there are pieces of the business that tie in with other industries and that kind of thing. But it's a marketplace, which comes along with a lot of challenges and complications, because you're building a community of entrepreneurs and you're building a community of professionals. And so how do you for both, and who do you think about more, and how do you, even around the revenue model, who do you charge for the service? And so those are all questions that I had to figure out in the beginning, and I'm still figuring out. But I think a lot of the people that the whole platform has been designed to support entrepreneurs, like that was my passion. And we charge the professional, because they're the ones that get business out of it. So they're paying for that revenue. And while you might look at them as our customer, and they definitely are, and I do cultivate those relationships, but all of our communication and all of the messaging and all of the resources are about the entrepreneur, because that's what the vision for a huddle is. And I think that's one thing I kept losing initially, is that is that vision, and being very resolute in that. I didn't have that bang on, and I was letting people sway me around all the directions you could go with the business that didn't really align with that, because they didn't really understand that that's what the value for me was. Yeah. And so I think those are important things to be aware of, is that people can be super smart, but they might not get what you're trying to do.
I've had the same challenge actually over the years, is that you have to really, and part of mine was like being articulate about what my vision was, and that can be a challenge. If you haven't got that quite right, it's very hard to go out and say, so I want to do this and my goal is this. And I know I need to do work in this area. I know this is your expertise. So
and I think nailing that, you don't ever really have it nailed, but working on that why, like, why are you doing it? So that, I don't know if you've ever seen Simon Sinek's TED Talk. What is your why? It's one of my faves. And so
I've just read his book recently.
Oh, he's so good. So good. And so, like he does the why, the how, and then the what. So, your vision, and then how you achieve that, and then what your product really is, which is kind of, it's relevant, but not as significant. And so I think that's, as far as when you communicate to people, it's important to know that. But I think even where you find the mentors, like just literally stalking people on LinkedIn, like I just reach out to people you think are smart, or people you've seen at conferences or speakers, or friends of friends that you think are doing cool things, or even doing something similar to your business. And most people are like pretty happy to sit down and coffee and stuff. Especially if you're pretty specific about what you want to get out of it. Like,
it's the key, eh?
Yeah. Like I I really appreciate that you're doing this really well. I would love to learn more about how you did that, or even just pick your brain on this particular area of business, because I think that you're doing something really innovative there. I think if you can be specific to people,
Yeah.
usually pretty happy to help.
Yeah, it does open doors, eh? Yeah.
Yeah.
And when stuff comes up that's hard, you've tell us about the ways that you kind of deal with it. Like, what's your resource? What's your toolkit that you've got?
My toolkit is, I guess it is always in flux and building. And I think one thing for me that when I first moved here was like reaching out to a lot of people, because I was literally like, my boyfriend used to call me a meetup junkie. Like, I'll go to every meetup and even business, because I was just desperate to meet people. Like, I had to, and most of them were total crap. Like, most of them just weren't that great, but it was the only way that I could get out there and meet people kind of doing similar things, and eventually start to suss out the landscape and figure out who really resonates for you. So that was a big one for me. And I think not being afraid to ask other people. So I'd mentioned that, like, reaching out on LinkedIn, that was how I actually got a contracting job that lasted me a full year when I moved here. Is just, I had found one of the guys on LinkedIn and just asked to go for coffee with him to understand more about how he built his business. And they offered me a job in that process. And so don't be afraid to reach out and stuff, I think is a big one. And then just figuring out how to learn the things that you don't know. So that might just be, if it's not asking people, reading or listening to podcasts is a big one for me. I love flicking them on in the car. Like, Tim Ferriss is one I love.
Yeah.
The Startup Podcast is another one.
John Lee Dumas, do you read Entrepreneur on Fire?
Yeah. I've heard him before. They have tons of them. Yeah. So he started ages ago. I think I remember listening to his 1,000th episode or something. Seth Godin is another one. There's some really cool people just doing really cool things. And so whether it's whatever it is that you're trying to learn about, or Audible, I've subscribed to Audible, so you can listen to audiobooks just in the car, because I'm just like the slowest reader in the world. So I've like beat myself up for years about how slow I am at reading. And literally it'll take me like months to get through a single book, because because you often don't have the time either, right? By the time you hit the bed, you're like beat. And it depends
what your learning style is too. Like, some of us prefer audio, some of us prefer to read, some of us visual.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Like, find what works for you, because not everything works for everybody, right? And just like reading other people's blogs as well. Like, I really like Mark Manson. Tim Ferriss does some good stuff there. Yeah. And then I guess finding the right people. So the one thing, and I mean, the reason that Huddle was really started was because one thing I found really challenging is having to learn about all these areas of your business and reaching out to these experts. And so some of them might be mentors. And so I guess the question is, do they understand your business? But some of them are supposed to be experts in their field. And it's like, you're trying to assess the ability of an expert that you don't know anything about. And so it's like, you're reaching out to an accountant and you don't know if they're good or not, or even a designer. Like, web design was a big
oh yeah, it's a nightmare. It's a minefield.
I used to go to like developer meetups, trying to understand like more about web development, and they speak a different language and they operate on a different level, and they almost every time were kind of looking at me like, what is this girl doing here? But I just wanted to know more about it. So I think that's one thing that I've tried to do is giving that information, like just giving that insight onto other people. And so that's what we do with Huddle is we vet all of the professionals before we match them with anybody. So we're saying they're good quality. We've reviewed their work. I sat down with an interview, if not in person, then over the phone, and talked to them and got an idea of like, if I haven't reviewed their work, check references. And I think, so I've come up with a little questions here. I was trying to think through my process that might be relevant for some of your listeners or viewers. I think, reviewing work for design and development is a big one. So if you can see previous websites, if they don't have a portfolio, then you should be probably asking why. It probably means that they either are moving into a new stream of things, or they've only worked for corporates and so have only built things under that corporate umbrella, which can be a bit of a red flag if you're working with a freelancer. If they haven't done anything on their own, you want to be asking them if they can actually take on your project, because often they'll be very creative and very good at what they do. So they can maybe build a website, but they don't know how to actually deliver on a timeline that isn't given to them by their boss. And so that was a big one that I got burned on early on, not on the website, but on the logos, all the design work for model. And so, you get
the project management skills are pretty lacking then.
Yeah, and the accountability piece just isn't there. So, and that's a big part of running your business. So they know how to be creative, but they might not necessarily know how to run a business.
Yeah.
So some of that for the freelancers, you want to make sure they have a few projects or years of freelancing under their belt.
Yeah.
Calling your references, and when you call them, ask, because everybody can find two people that'll say something nice about them, and so calling references is kind of a, I mean, I do it, but I think to challenge them a little bit, like ask what are some concerns that you might have about this person, or ask some of the harder questions. I think ask the same things to a few people. So if you're getting like a web design quote or even legal work or whatever it might be, ask the same question, especially if it's something particularly complex, like how would you address this? And ask that to a couple different people and see what the consensus might be,
Yeah.
And then ask dumb questions. So if you don't understand something, don't be afraid to ask, because chances are, if you don't understand it, it's not you, it's them not explaining it very well. And often, I mean, you hope this isn't the case, but I think often people, it's so funny because some of the smartest people I've ever seen in corporate or in meetings, like CEOs of companies that will ask completely dumb questions, and you realize nobody else in the room knew the answer either. And so they were the only ones that were ballsy enough to ask questions.
Yeah.
They genuinely want to understand. So I think that's a big part of it. Like, ask about their process. So like, what's the process that you're going to go through to achieve this? Or like, what do you need from me? And what do you give me? And what do you need from me? And then what's that kind of support and that communication process like? Because I think that can be a challenge if you haven't been through the process before.
Very much so.
And then, just ask tough questions as well. Like, when was the last time you worked on a project like this? Or when can you compare it to that? Or just ask really hard questions, because they should be able to, if they're experts in their field, they should be able to provide you examples of stuff that's come up before.
And delivery date, the biggie.
Yeah. And so I think that's one big thing, is getting on the same page about expectations. So often you'll be thinking one thing because that's what your assumption is, and they'll be thinking another, and you won't realize until it's 2 weeks too late that you didn't ever actually talk about the assumptions you had both been making. And so that's why it's helpful to write it down, even if it's in email, saying this is what I'm thinking, and just communicate, I think, via email quite a bit, with like summarize a conversation that you just had, especially if it's in the early days, like this is what I'm expecting I'm going to get for this price, and this is when you're going to deliver. So those key things, like you mentioned, delivery date's a big one.
Yeah. And you go out, and I think when I first looked at things, I went and Googled kind of what goes into a website and came up with a checklist or something. So I kind of net to them and say, so is this what we're doing?
And often, I mean, I think a lot of, it's across the board. It's not just with professional services, but if you know something so well, you forget that other people won't know that. And so when a developer or a designer is talking to you about something, they take for granted that you know everything they're talking about.
That's often what I help people set up. I call it my expectation setting document. So it's almost like rules of engagement, but not so formal, more of a kind of introduction to working with you. And I do what you can expect from me and what I expect from you.
Yeah.
It sets the terms of engagement. It sets the culture of how you're going to be working together, because the biggest, and the reason I did that is because of communication breakdowns, problems, challenges with clients. And I knew each time something came up, it was like, I need to capture that. I need to solve it. And going forward, and the biggest problems happen with miscommunication and expectations being not met.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing in relationships, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think the communication breakdown or just lack of communication sometimes is what leads to so many problems, and the different language that people use, so
yeah.
Somebody's using terminology that you don't get, like this happens to me still now, and I talk to professionals all the time. So just like clarify, like, what does that mean? Where does that fit in?
Yeah, totally. Because often people use different language for the same things that I find.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
In Canada, I had to learn a whole vocabulary of like language because people, people just speak in, I mean, it's not impossible to learn, and it's not, I'm kind of joking about it being a whole new language, but there are definitely so many dumb questions I'd ask because we just don't use the same term. Like the word turnover, for instance, for business isn't common in Canada. So that's not the word turnover was never mentioned to me, and I have an MBA in finance, so
that would be really confronting. It's like, I should know this, shouldn't I?
For a while it's like, oh my God, like I must be really dumb, but it's just not, the same. And so
it's colloquial terms, and then there's industry terms which can be really off-putting. And like when I've gone to write manuals or done documentation and process work in various different organizations and industries, I kind of start a library for myself. Just so I can build up all those terms and phrases and understand what people are talking about.
Yeah, that can be very, very helpful.
Yeah, well, and organizations, I mean, it could be, it could be a client, it could be a customer, it could be a student, it could be a participant, it could be all sorts of people who are the end user for your product or service. So, it simply can be quite different.
Yeah, you're probably really good at this, but just documenting a lot of stuff for that's one thing I'm trying to do with our intern now is like I've made videos of screen capturing our process, like behind the scenes, just because it saves me the 10 minutes having to explain that to now like the third person. And so it's that kind of stuff can be really, really helpful. Or Google Drive, I use a lot now to just share documents, even if it's explanations on, or like files and photos that everyone kind of needs access to. So that can be a really easy way to avoid sending a dozen emails back and forth.
Yeah, having a central folder system is kind of crucial for a new business. Having key folders, I've got a blog article on that about what the key folders you are for a business and your business, and then broken down by, there'll be slight differentiations for a product or service-based business because you should, if you're doing, depending on the size and the products and stuff, but there's some kind of core folders that you need to set up, and then deciding who has access to what and that kind of stuff is important because obviously you don't want everyone seeing the financial information.
Yeah, I've had to separate those.
Yeah, all the HR documents and that kind of stuff. There's certain legal requirements about privacy and things, but sharing information, that's crucial in growing a business and knowing what to share and how to share it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
cool. So just one more thing that I was looking at. It sounds like we've covered off your key things. Like I love what you said about that placebo effect and just realizing the power of our mind to get us focused and get through things which we think is really hard and we might have some fear around. That we can achieve stuff, and that perception can become our reality. And then the confidence thing around and building your own little tribe of people who are trusted that you can go to when the times are tough, because business is tough some days, and a lot of it because our business and our ego are so closely tied together that when we're putting ourselves out there every day, it can be quite challenging, and some days we just want to pull the covers over our heads because we just I don't want to face the world today, and that's normal. It's normal to feel that way, and you're not alone in that thought process, and then go and educate yourself. Right, and ask for help, which is another thing a lot of us women really struggle with, asking for help. We're the first one to often put our hand up and ask and help others, but asking for help, reaching out, and the generosity of spirit of a lot of people. As you said, the pay it forward. I think there's a lot of people who look into helping someone else further down that ladder.
Yeah.
I've got to reach back down and give a hand up and pull people up with them.
Yeah, that's an important part of it too. I think that can take your mind off your own struggles as well. If you're giving back a little, it can just be a little bit more rewarding.
Yeah, and I think it resets expectations too. If you buy into the Facebook feed of the perfect life that someone's living and business that they're running, you buy that story, and then you actually get beneath the surface and realize that that's just a story. It's not the whole picture. It can be really reassuring that, you know, you're in the same boat, and therefore your expectations, you're kinder to yourself.
Oh, definitely.
Expectations are different again, you know. You realize that everyone's struggling. You're not alone.
Yeah, I love that.
That's awesome. So thank you so much for joining me today on the Business Made Easy show.
No worries. It was my pleasure.
I think there's some great little tips in there that our listeners will find useful. And for those of you who haven't been to visit the website, I'll make sure the show notes, you'll have a link to the Huddle site so you can go and check out, especially for those of you who are wanting to get some help in those various areas and are wondering how to, how to find the right professional to help them in their business, because we all need help in various areas as we're growing our businesses. So I'll get you that link to go across. And thank you so much. Any last parting words of wisdom for our listeners?
Oh, I don't know. I think you covered it all. I think just the just the mindset thing is such a big one. And I think just to keep pushing through, because nobody finds it easy. And if you're gonna make something happen, then you gotta get through the challenging bits as well.
Yeah, and refocusing back on that why, isn't it? That's the key. Yeah, use that as your refocus when things get tough. Awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Fabulous.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it was so good catching up.
Fabulous.